What's going on, guys? This is Mitchell back with another episode of Slammed Outdoors, and in today's video I'm going to be walking through how to set up a bait casting reel. So this video is primarily going to be for people that really haven't fished with them before or are really trying to get into them a little bit more. This is just going to be some background about every little piece about adjusting it and just kind of how to set it up. All right, so there are really three main components when it comes to a bait casting reel you're going to need to keep track of, and these are going to be for setting brakes, as well as tension, and then your drag. So these three adjustments are going to be the star drag, which is this thing that's shaped like a star right there. And this is just going to determine how easy it is to pull line out of this thing when the bail is closed. And one thing I have learned is with bait casting reels, it's important not to get your drag set too tight because you risk breaking off in the hook set. And it's also a big risk not to set it too loose because I have noticed you're more likely to slip with your really loose, like maybe you do with a spinning reel. Like I set mine really loose typically. You're going to slip on the hook sets with your drag, and it might cost you fish. You're going to lose tension. It's not a great deal. So typically I like to just try to make it so where you really have to make an effort to pull it off. And just for adjusting, if you go to the left on this thing, on the left side, it completely is going to tighten it down if you go forward. And if you come back on a left-handed one, it's going to completely loosen up, which is going to just be like the bail's open. So I like to leave it so it's not all the way tightened down. But like if I'm going to pull line off, it's going to take a little bit of effort to pull it off. So that's going to be the drag on that. And then to just show you on a right-handed one, for if you're fishing with one of these, the drag on this is kind of tight already. If I back it away from me, the drag is going to loosen up. So either way, if you take the drag towards you, like if you're towards the fish, it's going to tighten down. And if you bring it back to you, it's going to loosen it up. So those are the two main adjustments there with the drag. So probably the biggest and most important adjustment you can make on a bait casting reel is going to be your brakes. So when you're casting this, if this is your first time, what you're really going to want to do is you're trying to prevent your reel from backlashing. So you're going to want your brakes tight to start out with, and then loosen it up from there. And in order to do this, you need to be familiar with the braking system on your reels. So I'm going to actually put this one down and talk about some different ones. This is a Corrado DC. It has kind of a unique situation because it has a chip in it that controls the brakes. So I'm going to pull up what was the first bait casting reel I ever bought, which is a Concept C by 13 Fishing. So with this, it has the same deal as your star drag, as this thing is called the tension knob. We'll get to that in a minute. And then it has the brakes. Now there's nothing on the outside of this one. This is going to be the first braking system I'm going to show you. It has a little dial on here, and pretty much all the 13 Fishing reels I think have this. It's called a beetle wing. And if you just pop it down, it has like a thing where it says to open and close it. If you pop it down, it shows the brakes. So the braking system on a bait caster is going to be numbered. And the highest number is going to be the highest brake setting. The lowest number is going to be the lowest brake setting. So on this, it goes from 6 down to 1. And the 6 setting is going to be the brakes are all the way tightened down. So it's going to slow the spool down as much as possible. And 0 is going to be no brakes. So the spool isn't going to, it's not going to do anything to slow the spool down on its own. This is going to be for big adjustments. So typically, if you're starting out and you've never thrown a bait caster before, or if you have and you just got a new one, you should always start on the highest setting and then kind of work your way down. And it's not going to be as much about like angling skill when you get down to lower numbers, as much as it's going to be the type of line you're throwing and how heavy of a bait you're using and the rod. Because if you're throwing a really light bait on here, like right now I'm using this thing for like weightless Senkos. It's like I have a little tiny like 4-inch Senko on here. I have my brakes set really tight because I really don't want to backlash this thing, and it's really light. So I usually try to keep mine tighter with that, but if I'm throwing a big jig or something on here, I'm going to have my brakes looser to really let that bait fly. I won't be as worried about backlashing. Wind is also a huge factor. So if you're backlashing a lot, it could be because you're casting into the wind. And then, so if you just know you're going to cast into the wind, I would recommend setting your brakes like maybe one segment tighter or than you normally do. The third thing that you're going to do with these is going to be the tension knob. And the tension knob is going to be this little knob right here behind the star drag. And this is going to be for small adjustments. And this is going to be kind of your fine tuning setting for a baitcaster to really get it to the settings that you really want it to be at. So kind of my general rule of thumb with this is when your bait falls, it should, like if you open your bail, which is going to be this little button right here, if you open the bail, your bait should fall slowly. So like right now it's a little tight. If I push this away from me, one click, it'll start to just fall on its own. And again, it's going to be the same deal on the right-handed ones. Going away from you, the tension is going to be less, and coming towards you, it's going to be more. So that's going to be the adjustment for those. And another thing to keep in mind is every reel is going to have its own braking system. So kind of back to the brakes here. So what I'm going to try to do real quick is just walk through what a couple of these different braking systems will end up looking like. So like on the Shimano Corrado, for example, it has this little dial thing here. And the number that it coincides with is going to be how much, like how heavy the brakes are. So right now I have it clicked to 4. But you can click it all the way down to 1. It's gonna be that like number closer to the spool. So I'll cover this in another video, but it's gonna be the same kind of concept for Daiwa reels. Daiwa really uses one main method of adjustment, but they have like 21 unique adjustment settings in their reel. So they'll have a dial in a similar spot on here that'll go from like 21 down to 0. Another kind of older fashioned design, which I don't think I see as much of now, is going to be a design. This one's a Fluger. I've been using it for frogs and stuff. But again, kind of with the bait, I want it to just slowly fall. And the newer you are to this, the tighter you're going to want that. So when you're learning to cast it for the first time, you're really just going to want it to slow fall. But what you need to do with this reel, for example, and all these reels, you'll be able to find kind of a guide to online if you look it up, if you have a different model. But I'm just going to cover like the 13 Fishing, the Fluger, and then the Bass Pro, which the Bass Pro reels are made by the same company that makes them for Lose. So they have the same settings. So what you're going to do here is it is like the push, lock, and unlock on here. So what we're going to do is just push it in and then just turn it, and then it's going to pop the whole side off like that. Okay, so the next type of brakes that we're going to see is these are going to be centrifugal brakes, and these are going to be just a little bit different. So typically you're going to have to take the side plate off of your reel to do that, and that should come with like the manual with your reel, or you could just look it up. But these are going to have little, like on here they have little pins that you have to push in or out. And if it like floats loose like this, it means it's on and it's working. This will slow the spool down. So this is like a bigger spool. And the bigger spools typically they tend to spin faster, so I like to keep my brakes on a little bit tighter. And I'm throwing like small frogs and stuff with this. So if I were to push it in like that where it won't come back out without me having to click it again, that's going to disengage the brake. And then this is just going to allow the spool to spin faster. I can cast further, but I'm going to have to be a little bit more wary of backlashes. So I'm just going to click these off because I'm throwing like really small frogs and wind and stuff, and I really don't feel like backlashing. So I'm just going to click those off. And then I'm just going to put my side plate back on. So then like when the rings are up like this, it's unlocked and now it's locked again. So now I can go back to fishing. And again, same adjustments. All of them are going to have a star drag and all. This is probably the most common design you'll see with brakes. Again, your brakes are a big adjustment. So with this, what you're going to want to do is just focus on, again, it's going to be dials. So there's going to be a number system on here. So 10 is going to be the most brakes you can have on here. And then when it gets down to 1 or 0, I don't actually remember. Okay, so it actually goes past 1, so it goes to 0. So this turns the brakes completely off, so you can just bomb cast with this, but you'll backlash more. Right now I have this set to about 3. So this is going to get me some good range, but I'm not going to be super worried about backlashing with it. So that's just kind of my little adjustment tip. And this is going to go for Bass Pro and Lose, since Bass Pro reels are made the same way that Lew's reels are. Pretty much all of them should have a spool tension knob. The most important braking mechanism when you're learning to throw a bait caster in your setup is going to be your thumb. So whenever you make a cast, it's going to be really important to do what's called thumbing. And this is where you keep your thumb on the spool to keep from spinning too fast and backlashing. So this is going to be a really, really important adjustment to make. And it's really going to have a huge impact on how much you backlash. If you cast it and just don't hold the thumb, this line is going to go everywhere. You're probably going to have a lot of backlashes. It's not going to be as fun of an experience. However, if you keep your thumb on there and thumb it, you'll get much better at throwing these. And then obviously getting your thumb to stop the spool right when you finish your cast is going to be a big piece as well. If you don't get your thumb pushed down all the way, the spool keeps spinning and you'll backlash a little bit. Not a huge deal. I'm actually going to go fish like tomorrow morning and I'll cover backlashes and some of that kind of stuff. And so in kind of the part 2 of this video, I'm going to go fish a pond like down the street from here. And I'm just going to cover kind of getting your brakes set right and thumbing and that kind of adjustment. So hopefully this video helps with getting your drag set and knowing where to set your brakes, where to set your tension, and kind of that whole process for going about setting it. And the most important thing you can do is go out and fish and really see what works best for you. So obviously every angler is going to be different. When you start, if you're backlashing, not a huge deal. You'll figure out how to get them out, and then it gets a lot easier after that. And that's just how you mess with it. So hopefully this helps, and hopefully part 2 really helps you. So catch you guys in that. All right, so this is part 2 of the video that I was kind of going over earlier. So it should take a decent amount of effort to pull your drag loose, but if it's all the way back down, higher chance of breaking off. And if you're throwing straight braid, or you're fishing really, really heavy cover, you're gonna wanna tighten it all the way down, because you're gonna be more worried about a fish wrapping you in something than anything else. So that brings us to the next 2 things with the brakes and the tension. So right now I have my brakes set for, again, this reel's kind of unique. It's set for fluorocarbon right now. Most reels have a number setting. This one also has a number setting, I guess. But the highest number is going to be the most brakes. So right now this thing has 4 brake adjustments and it's on 3. So I have a little bit of braking, but not as much as I could have. The most important thing when you're casting a bait caster is to do that. Is whenever you go to cast, just thumb your line like that, and then right before the bait hits, you want to push your thumb on it. And if your bait is like flying mid-cast, then all of a sudden it stops and just falls straight down, so you put your thumb on it a little bit early. In my opinion, better be a little early than a little late, but it will affect your cast distance a little bit. And then with your tension knob, you're just going to want to get so your bait falls at kind of a nice steady rate, which is going to be this little knob right here. Typically, I like to set my brakes a little bit tighter and then have my tension knob be pretty loose. I think that's a pretty, like, to me, that's just what I end up doing. That gets a little bit of extra casting distance without having to fight backlashes as much. Another side note, if you're just starting in fishing bait casters, throw mono. Like, don't buy fluorocarbon or braid, because you're just going to stress the backlashes more. It's going to be easier to backlash with fluorocarbon than anything else. I do it all the time with fluorocarbon, and I've been fishing bait casters for like 5 years. It's like, get some mono, get like 10, 12 pound mono, and put it on your rod, put it on your reel. Additionally, if you're just starting out, it's easier, in my opinion, to cast sidearm than overhead, just because when you're overhead, people have a tendency to jerk, and then you get more backlashes. So if you're just starting out, you don't want it so your bait falls, you're going to push your button down, and then hold your thumb. You're going to come back like this, and then just hold it like that. Once you get this motion down, you can kind of incorporate casting further and seeing what you can do with it. People backlash, it's just going to happen. So it's important you learn how to pull now, but it's pretty easy. That was awful. Like that. So just backlash right there. This one doesn't look too bad. All you need to do is keep pulling your line out and pop your rods up to get the line going into the water. And so all those little loose pieces that you see are going somewhere else. Once you get all those out in the water, you can reel it back in. You can let it ball up, but the problem is a lot of times when you let the line ball up around you, it has a tendency to like just loop itself, and then when you go to reel it back in, you just knot it, and then you have to cut all your line. It's very depressing. But anyways, like, there's no backlash there now. Then just give some tension and just reel it back in. A lot of times you get bit during that too. That's a cool little tip. Because your bait's just sitting out there, and fish usually don't see that slower presentation. So sometimes you can catch fish doing it. I didn't there. It doesn't happen super often, but it's cool when it does. Check my trailer. So those are some kind of break adjustment tips that I have regarding a baitcaster. So if you're just starting out, get your drag set kind of tight, but not too tight. You're going to want to start your brakes in the highest setting if you're new, or if your baitcasting reel is new. And then just kind of work it down to whatever's easiest for you. And then small adjustments with the tension knob. So if you're backlashing, instead of maybe switching to like a higher brake setting, you can just turn the knob a little bit. That'll help you out. So my tips, and I hope this helps. Remember to like and subscribe, helps the channel. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.